So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Salam everyone who's in the JK. We currently have flow shooting at the moment. Maaf if I'm disturbing your study time. I do apologize. But hopefully I can, you guys can just listen with like a side ear and it can possibly help you ahead of this week, inshallah. So, my name is Nurinisa Isaacs, and I host the weekly MSA classes for the love of Allah at UCT. And we live stream it every week as well. Unfortunately, we don't have the monitor and stuff here because usually the people who are in the JK, they can see the slides and stuff, but not last week because you guys were on break the week before. We are basically doing commentary on a book called Secrets of Divine Love. Right? Please forgive me, I can't see you guys. I can just see like silhouettes because of load shedding. So basically what that book does, it takes readers on a sort of a personal but spiritual journey, right? On how to connect with Allah or to reconnect with Allah, depending on where you are in terms of your spirituality, right? So I skipped a few chapters because I thought it would be fitting for us to focus on Ramadan, seeing that we are in the month of Ramadan. And like just a quick recap of last week, I just gave a week before a brief introduction to what Secrets of Divine Love covers in Ramadan. And all the topics it was covered is that how do you prepare yourself for Ramadan? Because it was the Monday before Ramadan, before the moon was sighted, right? So what we discussed, can you sort it up? Okay. So what we discussed is that how do you spiritually prepare yourself for Ramadan? Because a lot of us, we just think of Ramadan as, and I'm going to abstain from food and drink for like a good few hours, and then I'm going to break my fast and then eat like, the snacks and stuff, and then read Quran, go to Tarawih Salah, and then after Ramadan ends, you sort of back at square one. And that's not exactly why Ramadan was given to us as Muslims, because Ramadan is actually a mercy that was given to us by Allah. And for a lot of us, we are struggling with respective challenges and things, and Ramadan is sort of that perfect breeding ground for us to just change our bad ways, or at least put the ball in motion to change our bad ways. And hopefully after the 29 to 30 days, become, inshallah, better Muslims, right? So, inshallah. So, please forgive me. This is the first class I'm doing in Ramadan. So, it's good. I'm a country reporter or supporter. But what we covered was, and one of the main points that I just want to bring to you guys' attention before I start with today's session is that before you prepare yourself for Ramadan, some of us might be now, look, Friday is going to be, inshallah, the 15th day of Ramadan, right? We're already in the second third of Ramadan. Some of us might think, oh my gosh, I didn't do anything impactful, to get myself on that spiritual track, to get closer to Allah. And then some of us might feel despondent because you didn't prepare yourself before Ramadan and you think it's too late. And I'm just here to reassure you that it's not true, because Allah did give us 30 days, and Allah does encourage us to stand in Salah at night, to read Quran. We don't just fast to abstain from food and drink. We fast to abstain from our desires as well. And the beauty behind fasting is that when your body's in a weakened state, when you are not having food and that energy, you're just depleted, you would find that you would be less likely to want to exert your energy on things that you would have outside of Ramadan. So you're going to channel energy a lot more practically and meaningfully. And what it also does is mindfulness. And what the teach of extreme reflection, introspection, because it's going to be cliche to say, shaitan is locked up. It's just you and your nafs, fighting your nafs. But some people can't actually fight their nafs. Some people's nafs are just so strong that they just give in to their nafs every single time. And they've given up hope to the point where, what's the point of fighting my nafs when I can just do it? And that is when it's a clear sign that someone has lost the plot. And what Ramadan does is that it gives us this opportunity for us to see what our nafs actually are and how to identify it and how to actually start fighting it, or to start putting boundaries in place, to start creating discipline. And what I was hoping that those who did attend the class and those who maybe live streamed it would at least have like some form of plan of action for Ramadan. So it's not just a month wasted, because there's no guarantee we're going to make it to the next Ramadan. The fact that we are in this month of Ramadan right now is a blessing from Allah. And we should not be taking that for granted, because there are people who died a day before Ramadan. There are people who almost made it. They probably had this plan of action, this grand plan on how they are going to, become a better Muslim this Ramadan. And then Allah decided, your time is there. And they didn't get that Ramadan. Yeah, we are in Ramadan, but some of us might still be wasting this month, still doing the same things we did outside of Ramadan. And there are people who have wished, I can't speak for the dead, but I can only imagine those people who didn't make it for that Ramadan. They might have wanted Allah to take them away when Allah was pleased with them, and they might not have been pleased with themselves. But Allah decided that it's time for them to go. Yeah, we are in Ramadan. Let us make the most of this Ramadan, because there's no guarantee we'll reach the next Ramadan. And I personally make God that all of us be able to reach the next Ramadan. And by the time we reach the next Ramadan, is that we're not the same person that we were today, the 3rd of April, 2023. Right? We are better people, we are better brothers, we are better students, we are better sons, nieces, and nephews, we are better people overall. And hopefully Allah is pleased with us, because that's ultimately why we have to do things, not to please man, but to please Allah, right? So today, I don't have much time, but I'll try to get through it, not too rushed, but so I can cover, at least you guys can take something away from it. So we're now discussing the spiritual stages of fasting, right? And some people might not have known that there are spiritual stages to fasting, right? So there are 3, right? You have your outer fast, then you have your inner fast, and then you have the heart-centered fast. And we should actually ask ourselves, what type of fasting are we doing? Are we just doing the outer fast where people can see that we're not eating, we're not going to the cafe and buying whatever we usually buy? Is it just for show, or are we actually having a heart-centered fast? And this is the fast that we should have, right? And I'll explain that as I go along, right? Now, the outer fast is obviously fasting of the limbs, but also it's important to note that the outer fast sets the foundation for the inner fast and the fasting of the heart, or the heart-centered fast, right? Because if you're not going to physically abstain from food and drink, you're still going to have all of that energy to do the things that you're going to do, right? The wisdom behind us abstaining from food and drink is not so that we can, yes, it is part and parcel of feeling the poverty and feeling the hunger that poor people might feel. But what it does is that when you don't eat for as long as we do, right, our body weakens. Personally, when it gets to around about 5 o'clock, I feel like I'm going to just faint. That's when my body clock starts conking out. Everyone else's body clock is different, but we all know that we get weak in Ramadan. We feel tired. We're more tolerant because we don't have the energy to make argue back, or to, because you're just so weak, right? And what happens is that by abstaining from food and drink, your body becomes weaker, you become more tolerant. And when you become more tolerant, you are less likely to put yourself on this pedestal. And that's where our ego comes in. Because if you actually think about it, how you feel an hour before, 3 hours before you must break your fast, and how you feel like half an hour after you finish eating. I'm personally energized and I can do things I couldn't have done 3 or 4 hours ago, right? So when we go hungry, that's also Allah showing us that He's going to starve our ego, right? And when He starves our ego, we become more humble, we show more humility, we become more tolerant, right? So this sets the pace. This opens the door towards the second and the third spiritual stages of fasting, right? And that is the inner and the heart-centered fast, right? Now, there's this quote that Ehilwa says in the book that I think it's just so beautiful, and it's so accurate as well. Since the ego depends on the body, when we weaken the body, it serves to weaken the hold of our egoistic desires upon us, right? You are less likely to want to indulge in things that you enjoy doing, that requires energy during Ramadan and outside of Ramadan. A lot of us might quit social media for a month, might maybe not listen to music or whatever the case may be, that they give up something that they enjoy, And they realize they actually have a lot more time on their hands. But also what they realize is that they're not the same person that they were moments before Ramadan started. They're a softer version. They're a more tolerant version. You'll find that it's easier to communicate with someone and to reason with someone when they are fasting because they're just so pop. So I take advantage of my parents like that because I know they're going to say yes. But that's one of the wisdoms behind why we fast and why we stay away from food and drink. It's because when we don't have the energy, to do things that Allah would dislike. And that's a wisdom I just want us to keep at the back of our minds when we do fast and when we do decide to maybe change our approach on our fasting. It's not just about abstaining from food and drink. It's a holistic fast. And most people might not know that until maybe they reach the early 20s, because that's when they realize that there are certain habits that they've developed that they really might want to stop. Or they have this revelation, just woke up one night, or just woke up with the tahajjud and like, I need to get my life in order. And then that's a mercy, right? And then Ramadan comes, Ramadan gives you all of the tools in order for you to become that. But what do most of us do? We don't use Ramadan. We don't take advantage of Ramadan. And Allah wants us to take advantage of Ramadan. Because like I said, there's no guarantee that we're going to make it to the next one. It might sound pessimistic, but it's true. It's true. Now, the inner fast is very important. Well, all of the spiritual stages are important, but the inner fast, I think, is probably the most difficult. And I want to pose this question, is that our thoughts, after a while, it shapes our character, it shapes what we are inclined towards, it shapes what we're going to be more tolerant of. We are a culmination in our head, like we just have a whole lot of thoughts there, and our thoughts sort of dictate where you are going to go. Because when you think, you make choices, right? So you're choosing to think X, Y, and Z, right? So in Ramadan, there's a big emphasis on taqwa, right? And taqwa is Allah consciousness. And I love the way Allah describes the body. She says that the heart is a seat of God consciousness, and that it is our job as Muslims to guard the gates, which is our hands, our mouth, our eyes, our ears, and our feet. So what does she mean by that? Don't look at haram things. Don't listen to gossip. Don't gossip or badmouth other people. Don't go to places you weren't supposed to go. Don't take things or do things that you weren't supposed to do, right? When we are actively practicing taqwa, we are much more Allah conscious, right? And I always ask myself, and I ask other people, why is it that we have this heightened sense of taqwa in Ramadan, but then outside of Ramadan, it's as if Allah isn't there. Allah is closer to us in our jugular vein. I don't know why. Who are we fooling by thinking that Allah isn't there? Allah can see you inside of Ramadan and outside of Ramadan, right? So why are we choosing to only practice taqwa inside Ramadan, but when Ramadan ends, we are just, it's a free for all, right? Now, the inner fast, that I would assume, and I would say is probably the most difficult. And I'll explain why. Our thoughts can actually kill us. I know sure as students, a lot of you guys experience, right? I wouldn't believe so to believe that at some point all of us we overthought the process. Some of us will justify it by saying, I just need to make sure that I covered all possibilities. So if things go wrong, I already planned for that, right? But at some point, people's thoughts are good thoughts. Some people's thoughts are just by us being Allah conscious with what I'm thinking. Oh my God, I just thought on full display all the time. Would you still be thinking about the things that you are thinking? If other people could see, it's like there's just subtitles above your head and people can see exactly what you're thinking in real time. Would you still be thinking the things that you are thinking? Would you still be thinking the things of other people, right? How differently wouldn't you choose your words? How differently wouldn't you choose to act if your thoughts were in full display of everyone? I'm pretty sure a lot of us would be a lot more conscious about our thoughts, because not all of us have positive thoughts. We all got intrusive thoughts at times. There's no judgment. We're human. Some of us act on our intrusive thoughts. Some of us don't. But this just goes to show, if you don't want other people reading your mind or knowing what you're thinking, Allah is constantly knowing what you're thinking. Yet we have no shame thinking the things that we do, doing the things that we do. Allah can see you, whether you like to, when you want to believe it or not. Allah can see you, and you will be held accountable for your actions. I will be held accountable for my actions if I don't repent. And the beauty of Ramadan is that Allah broke it up into 3 parts. We have the 10 days for mercy, the 10 days for forgiveness, and the 10 days for protection of the hellfire, right? Use those 10 days. Use not just the 10 days as, okay, now I must stop asking for forgiveness now because we're in the last third, so I must only ask Allah to protect me from hellfire. No, constantly ask Allah for forgiveness, because you don't know how your thoughts can possibly damage you or possibly damage someone else if it was acted upon. Now, in order for us to develop we need to change the state of our fighting a Nazi is quite difficult, but people they get stimulated very quickly. For example, someone spends too much time on TikTok, for example. Some people might feel drained, or some people might feel drained in the company of too many people because maybe they're an introvert, right? So we all have our different stimulus, right? And what happens is that in order for us to feel overwhelmed, we are having too much of something being put on us, right? So we should take a similar approach to how we view our hearts, right? So if you want to change the state of your heart for it to become lighter, to become better, whatever the case may be, I'm hoping that everyone has intention of changing the heart for the better, not for the worse, because I don't think Allah is going to answer your dua if you're going to ask your Allah to make your heart black or for it to be turned cold and things. The fact that you can feel emotions is a mercy. Don't ever ask Allah to make you cold hearted. Social media glamorizes this idea of being cold-hearted and being emo and being depressed. It's a very unfulfilling life to live if you are cold-hearted. You will not be able to enjoy the sweetness that Allah has given for us, has laid out for us, if you weren't able to feel. And you will only be able to feel if your heart is receptive towards Allah's love. And the only way that can happen is if we create the environment for our heart to be receptive. And that means changing what we feed it. You need to be feeding your heart with things that will please Allah, not things that will cause him anger, not things that will possibly lead to your book being handed to you in your left hand. Inshallah, may Allah never allow any of us for our books to be handed in our left hand. All of us have our books in our right hand, inshallah. And so Allah said, I am pleased with you, because that is just, I think that's the one line every believer wants to hear. Because if you don't hear that, then you know, hey, I'm gonna burn now. I don't joke. I don't joke about, oh no, I'm gonna go to Jahannam and those things. You can't grasp the depth and the magnitude of what Jahannam actually is. So let's not make light of something that Allah made very clear for us not to do things so that we can fast track our way there. Don't take an Uber Express to Jannah. Just like take an Uber Express to Jannah. Okay, so previous classes, sessions, we touched on what the fitra is. So for those who don't know what the fitra is, inclination that all of us have within us. The system might ask, but I don't believe in God, but I still want to do good. Then what does that mean? We all have a fitra. And that fitra is a natural calling for us to do good. And when you do good, you're doing things that are pleasing Allah, because Allah doesn't want us to do things that are bad. So feed your fitra, nourish your fitra with things that will make it grow. Like you feed a baby, like in Ramadan, in the evening at the buka table, you're going to eat a date, you're going to feel energy surge, you're going to eat food so that you can have your strength built back. Same with your fitra. Feed your fitra with things that's going to make it stronger, not weaker. Because when your fitra is weak, your life's going to be very unfulfilling. And no one wants to live an unfulfilling life. Inshallah, Allah protect us from such dark thoughts, inshallah, and that all of us are able to live a life of purpose, because Allah created every single one of us with purpose. Now, the last one is the heart-centered fast. So we know that in order for us to remedy our hearts, we need to do things that can bring us closer to Allah. And for some of us, it's a challenge. Some of us might not feel as if we are deserving of Allah's love, or that Allah should forgive us or even give us a hearing, because we're just that deep into giving into our nafs. And that's what the shaitan wants you to believe. Allah wants you to turn back to him regardless of how many times you sin. But that shouldn't be an excuse for you to sin every time. Okay? Because if you're actively choosing to sin, you're undermining Allah's forgiveness. And for me, that is just extremely disrespectful. Now, there's a saying by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I think all of us should at least keep this in our heart. My heart remains awake. And we might be resting. Our hearts are still in a state in which it's remembering Allah. Because Allah remembers you the way you remember Him. If you're not going to remember Allah in good times, Allah's not going to remember you. Don't go to Allah only when you need your du'as to be answered, because life is not treating you well. But when life is treating you, don't even take a minute out to say shukr. Don't have a one-sided relationship with Allah, because if Allah snapped His fingers now, we will be no more. This dunya can be no more. So having gratitude is extremely important. And when we have gratitude, we are remembering Allah's favors upon us. So let us constantly try and strive towards having a heart that is in remembrance of Allah. Let us not only have taqwa in Ramadan, and then after Ramadan comes, the taqwa just evaporated, and then we are just back to the people we were hoping we would not become. So what is beautiful about taqwa is that if you practice it and you are sincere in practicing taqwa, it actually has the potential to transform all of your acts into acts of worship. Because when you do things for the sake of Allah, you actually commit, you actually worshiping Allah, right? So if you've never done this before, try and make your intention to always be for the sake of Allah, regardless of what you're doing. If you're going to work, Ya Allah, I'm going to work for Allah's sake so I can earn an honest living. If your mom calls you to go do the dishes, or I don't know, to pull the car in because she doesn't want to, say, Ya Allah, I'm doing this because I want to ease the load on my mother, so my mother doesn't have to do it. Do things with the intention of pleasing Allah first, and you'll see things will start to change. Your perspective on life will start to change. Your heart will start to change. That's how you start purifying your heart, right? So it's almost lunch time now, and I'm gonna wrap up very soon. So Ramadan, obviously, it's a month of reflection. It's a month of muraqabah, or observation, because you're able to see yourself much more clearly than what you would have seen yourself outside of Ramadan. Just remember, there's no shaitan, so there's no whispers coming in saying, tempting you to do this, to do that. It's just you and your nafs. Allah's going to show you what your nafs are, and Allah's going to make you decide, am I going to give in to my nafs, or am I going to put in effort to resist it? Am I going to build the discipline to resist it for Allah's sake? That's a question only you can answer. So just to end off the session with is that you'd find that there are some people who are still rude, still very intolerant, very impatient. They don't look like they changed much in Ramadan compared to when it isn't Ramadan. And that is a jihad they need to fight, right? That's their nafs might be a lot more potent than what yours are. But that doesn't mean that you need to retaliate and be rude back. Have mercy on them, because Prophet Muhammad said, whoever doesn't show mercy will not receive mercy. If you are in a position where you need mercy, you are going to ask Allah with all of your heart, Ya Allah, just have mercy on me. But if the roles were reversed and someone was at your mercy, are you going to kick them down, or are you actually going to give them that mercy? Because you don't know when you're going to be in need. So don't approach people with harshness. Don't approach people with arrogance, or thinking that I'm smarter than you, so therefore you must just listen to me, or speak to them in a condescending tone. Regardless of what your status is, always remain humble. Because Allah can remove everything that you've so body in a second, and then what you're going to do to return back to him. I'll end off, and he says, as water drops make a river, thoughts make us. Our thoughts can destroy us, and our thoughts can free us as well. When you surround yourself with people that please, when you're giving dawah, please don't force someone to go and make salah. You need to always approach it with gentleness, right? When you are thinking, when you are sitting alone, sometimes when you have your intrusive thoughts, just ask yourself, if this thought had to be publicly displayed, would I feel ashamed? Would it hurt someone? Would Allah be pleased with it? If not, then try and push it aside. Try and fill your mind with you reflect on the things that Allah has granted you, so that you can be close in our body. There are people right now who don't have clothes on their body. There are people who don't have the resources we have access to. There are people who don't have a family to go to for iftar in the evening. So let us be grateful for the things that we have, and let us be conscious of what we think, how we think, and when we act on our thoughts, inshallah. That is how I wrap up today's session, inshallah. Hopefully, there was some form of that came from it. And inshallah, I'll see you. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi.